Living in the city versus living in the suburb.
That is by far the biggest thing for people in the city is like kind of that closeness of everything.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you want to live near Broad Street when the Eagles are about to win the Super Bowl? Yes. I
You
would
wanna
love
live
to be
there?
I would love to be in the middle of that chaos.
Well, and that lends itself to what I'm talking about is that community is so important.
All right, moving on to the suburbs. As far as expecting to like walk out your door and be able to like kind of go find something to do, you kind of have to plan it a little bit more. Welcome back to another episode of Millennia Of. Today we're talking about something that Seth says I am completely unqualified to talk about. What we're talking about today: living in the city versus living in the suburbs. Pros, cons. I say I am qualified because I have lived in both. He has pushed back and said, no, you have not lived in city limits. While I have not lived in the city limits of Philadelphia County.
Details matter, Jen.
And I do always say I'm a Delconian through and through. And where I am initially from, where I was born and raised, is right outside West Philly in good old Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. But I'm on the 69th Street terminal side of Upper Darby. So walking distance from there. If you know Pika's, if you know, you know.
You're so suburban.
Oh, good old suburbia.
Yeah.
Upper Darby. Good old suburbia.
What do you call it? The concrete jungle?
Yeah. Concrete jungle. I had a front patch of grass and a back alley.
Did you mow that grass?
No, you couldn't even fit a mower on it. You needed to use a weed whacker.
Did you weed whack that grass?
My dad would never trust me with that. Are you kidding?
Okay, got it.
If you had a lawnmower, you would be able to sit it on there and not even make one full push. Yeah. And you wouldn't you and a lawnmower wouldn't have been able to.
It's just for aesthetic. Yeah.
It's where we buried our hamsters and gerbils and where we grew an impressive amount of vegetables. My dad had a tomato garden. He grew hot peppers. I think we started growing bell peppers for a little, and we had a strawberry garden in that teeny, tiny little patch of grass.
Okay.
Well, there was like dirt around the edges, but
okay.
Anyway.
So what's the premise? I mean, what's the idea here?
I don't know. In case people are kind of in the middle of like, well, if you're like living in the city, if you're living in the city, you know pros and cons of the city. But if people are kind of like moving maybe to Pennsylvania and are deciding, where do we want to be in the city? Do you want to go outside the city? If you're kind of in the like kind of age bracket of, we have fun in the city, but like, do we want to venture outside of it? What are the pros and cons of each? So knee-jerk reaction, what's your preference, in the city or suburbs?
Right now, because I have kids, is definitely the suburbs.
If you didn't have kids?
I think I would I would be open to living in the city, but it would have to be a pretty specific part. There'd have to be a lot to do. Obviously, it would be safe. But if I didn't have kids, I mean, when they're really young and they're not even in the school district, the school system, it's hard. It's hard because like you've got strollers and parking, and a lot of people don't have like dedicated parking. Like I know people have literally just moved out of the city just because they had a dedicated spot to park every day.
I was gonna say off the bat for me, it is a hard no for me personally because of driving. Yeah. Driving in the city is one of the most infuriating things to me. My best friend lives in South Philly, and
I actually like driving in the city because you can drive there's no rules. Like I love driving in Manhattan.
You can drive like an asshole. You have to drive like an asshole.
When I was in college, I drove this my mother got a new car and I was driving her wood panel minivan. Dude, and I was whipping that thing all over Manhattan, and it was awesome because you could just like there's no one like flips you off because it's
okay, it's one thing like getting in and out of this, it's just like it's gridlocked. Like the city of Philadelphia was not created to handle the amount of vehicles on the road. They were created for a horse and buggy.
Do you know what year Philadelphia was founded?
Other than it was the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776.
Yeah, that's
in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know what year Philadelphia was founded though?
No, but it was the 13 original colonies that was founded.
Philadelphia was not an original colony.
Okay,
Pennsylvania was an original
whatever.
colony. So it's 1682.
Look at us. Oh, I actually saw some houses for sale on the market that were built in the 1600s.
Yes.
I was like, whoosh.
But like most of these old cities kind of, there were fires and most of them burned. So like basically what you see other than like Elfress Alley and like some of the old parts down in the, like down by the river is really the only like original parts left. But most of these cities like burned. So, but yeah,
And somehow most
1682.
somehow most parts of the city have not burned, contrary to the Eagles winning a Super Bowl and the Phillies making it to the World Series. Which is when you would think it would burn down. Okay, but that is when my tune changes. So living in the city, okay, we will structure this better in just a second, I promise. But where you can flip my script is if you say, "Hey, you want to live near Broad Street when the Eagles are about to win the Super Bowl?" Yes. Yes, I would love to be there? I would love to be in the middle of that chaos.
I think a lot of people in the suburbs would just want to.
Only because I know there's. Just try getting into. I want to be in that. I want to be there.
Yeah, but
when the Phillies made it to won the NCLS and made it to the World Series and get like I didn't have to drive.
Are there any city dwellers who enjoy those parades to the point where their property is damaged and there's shit everywhere?
You're assuming properties are getting damaged. Like,
what?
No, they're not all getting damaged.
No, but on Broad Street is a pretty affluent area.
There.
I don't know, man.
Good luck getting in and out of there.
No, I think the businesses there don't like shit getting messed up and all that. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of suburban people are like, yeah, I'll go down there visit, but then I get to go home to my nice neighborhood with no damage. But that's okay. I know I'm a stick in the mud. It's fine.
All right. So our opinions aside, pros and cons of being in the city versus being in the suburbs. I mean, I think a lot of this would be kind of like, well, yeah. So obviously my one tick in the con side for things for the city is parking and driving. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, if you're living in the city, why do you even have a car? If you have a car, like that's like rich people stuff. Paying for a spot given if you live in the city and you do own a spot, that's leverage for when you want to move because you get the extra. It's more sellability.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I've sold condos with parking spots.
Oof. Oh wait, so did I.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the one I just had a buyer purchase in the city, and that one I didn't mind. Anytime we had to go to that property, it was a gated community. It had guest parking. Yeah. That wasn't really city life.
No.
What would you say is so benefits though to living in the city? Always things to do.
Well, living in the city, I mean, from a real estate standpoint, I mean, it's much easier to purchase property in a city.
Right now?
Yeah, right. Most of the time, it's just not as
robust.
Yeah, it's just not as, which kind of lends itself to this topic in general, which is, the suburbs will always be a little bit more desirable from a real estate standpoint, but I know city dwellers who are like, it's city or bust. They love the idea of everything being walkable. They like that they don't have to get in their car to go do everything. They like that they've got corner stores. They like the density. They like the neighborhoods. They like having people close by. They love all the restaurants. They can walk to restaurants and they don't have to drive to the hot spot that's 10 minutes away. They can just walk down the street.
And I will say that is one thing that I did like about living outside the city, if you want to get specific, was that I would be able to call up my friends, say hey, let's hang out. We would just walk to meet each other.
Yeah.
And everything, the sidewalks everywhere. I mean, you could walk just absolutely everywhere. Didn't have to get rides.
And in the major cities, even outside of Philly, even the major cities, every neighborhood is specific. So you get certain demographics that live in certain, there's certain, my brother still lives in the city down in the Fairmount section by the penitentiary. And he is, I don't think he's ever going to leave. I mean, he loves it. The whole street blocks off. He could, his son can run out the door, and he was just saying this the other day. His son can run out the door and knock on 7 or 8 doors. And
I was going to say there's such a sense of community too.
There can be. Now sometimes you go astray in these cities, and you can find less hospitable areas, but that's kind of the same in the suburbs. I mean, I have moved some clients into neighborhoods and they have an expectation of how neighbors are going to interact, and it just ends up not being that way. So that is, but by far the biggest thing for people in the city is kind of that closeness of everything. Mm-hmm. Whether it's just the corner store or it's restaurants or it's neighbors, and also their job.
Yeah.
If they work downtown.
Yeah, and if you have to still go in office. I mean, I know that I'm backtracking to the parking point because I forgot to bring this up is, listen, can I parallel park? Absolutely, like a champ. Take pride in it, to be quite honest. There is parallel parking, and then there is city parallel parking. Boy, are they not the same.
Why?
Oh my God. Can I parallel park? Yeah, with ease.
You're
but
such
like
a suburban girl.
Oh
You're
my
such
God. Okay. That's why I said there is a difference. Like I take pride in my parallel parking until I am in those city limits in Center City well, first of all, if you're in Center City, you're not parallel parking anymore.
What's the problem, Jen?
Okay. First of all, I have anxiety. Second of all, you've got the cars parked both sides of the street on down the one ways. And then you've got like 15 people piled up behind you waiting for you to pull into a spot. And you think you're going to hit the car next to you. And then you're like, oh my God, I call my friend to come out and park my car for me. I'm like, I can't handle this amount of pressure. You need to come out here and do it for me.
So what happened while you were waiting for her to get out and into your car and backing up traffic? And
I call her on my way down the street and say, prepare yourself. Never get out of the shower, get ready. I need help.
You're like an onion, Jen. Every time we peel away a layer.
That or I just circle the block, where I just circle the block and hope I find one on a side street. But I have since learned, fine, then I will just park up onto half of the sidewalk. I have a big vehicle. It's not really city friendly. I don't know if people have gathered yet my personal opinions on physically living in the city. Am I a diehard Philadelphia fan? Am I insanely proud to be from Philly? Absolutely. Philadelphia fan through and through. Physically living there? Ooh, we'll let my friends do it. I will come visit.
Okay.
That's my personal
And
opinions.
so we talked about pros, and now talk about cons. Why wouldn't you want to live there?
Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
I thought I just rambled off a whole bunch of them.
You did?
Maybe parking and driving holds such weight
Yeah,
to me.
I think you gave one. I think the car situation
They're so
is
heavy.
what.
It's just like, okay, so in the suburbs, if it says like you have to drive like 46 miles, it's about 46 minutes, or like maybe at most 50. It
is? In the suburbs?
Like if I'm like out around here, it says like, oh, it's going to be like 45 minutes. I expect to be maybe like, okay, 30 to like 45 miles and whatever. Yeah. I'm like, oh, all right, makes sense.
Well,
then because then I'm in the city and it's like, I said it to my friend. I'm like, oh, cool. 45 minutes for 12 miles. Okay, great. Got it.
Okay.
It is such an aggravating 45 minutes.
I'm going to let the math of all that, what you just said, kind of go by because it's not a math podcast. No, I don't disagree. 12 miles in city limits in Philadelphia, it's pretty far.
Going one end to the other.
I don't even know if you would reach the other end of the other. I don't know.
I am just throwing numbers out there.
You would go Naval Square all the way up to Chestnut Hill. I think that's like the longest run. So I don't think it's 12 miles. Plus, in the suburbs, in order to go 60 miles in 60 minutes, you'd have to be going.
Don't tell the cops.
No, but I'm just saying, like, you could go 60 miles, but you'd have to be on highway pretty much the whole time because
Oh, that's the thing. There's a lot more highways out here.
In order to match the minutes to the miles, you need to be going at least 60 miles an hour.
I'm aware. And out here, I can hop on 422 easy. Or I can or if you're from Chester County, you can hop on 202 pretty easy. Or you can hop on the turnpike.
So what are the pros and cons of suburbs? Because you're obviously, the parking and the driving is just such a con for the city, but we're not going to talk about any more cons for the city. Would you like to?
I'm still going to give one more pro to the city though, is go birds. All right, moving on to the suburbs. No, I mean, so then you have out in the suburbs. Now that I'm bringing driving back into the mix and just kind of like walkability. Sidewalks, fewer and far between, depending on which suburb area that you're in. Got to drive more places. Like, got to go to the store. You got to drive there. As far as expecting to like walk out your door and be able to like kind of go find something to do, you kind of have to plan it a little bit more. However, as far as now, this is also a bias. I grew up in a row home. I think there are benefits to living in rows. I also think there are cons. Personally, I grew up too long with a row home that had paper thin walls. I think that there is a more wider area. There's more options of detached homes in the suburban areas. You're in the city, you're in a row home. For the most part, am I wrong?
Attached living.
Yeah, so you have attached living. I shared walls with newborn twins growing up. Not awesome. So more options of detached living in the suburbs, I'd say is a big pro.
Okay.
Your turn.
My turn?
Your turn.
Would you like me to do a con?
I've been hijacking this conversation for the majority of the time.
You're obviously very passionate about it, Jen.
I can make my opinions passionate about just about anything.
Especially parallel parking in the city. Good God.
If you've seen me try to do it, you would know.
So let's take this in a direction of community, because we talked about the city and community and people liking it. There is a very strong argument, and of course I've read books on this, but a very strong argument that, so basically after World War II in the 50s, the prosperity of this country kind of collided with technology, where it was cheap to build homes, and in that regard, it made it affordable for people to own homes in the suburbs. There was a big emigration out of the cities, dating way back, and a lot of that, believe it or not, had to do with sanitation. So there was no sewers or anything like that. So it was really the people who lived in the cities were the working class, the people who had no other choice. After World War II, essentially what happened is that technology and like Levittown is a good example in Bucks County, where the technology got to a point where people could afford to move homes, and the massive emigration of the 50s began. What ended up happening, though, is that there are strong anthropological and sociological proofs now that community has actually diminished, because in a lot of these sprawl communities where you don't have that density, you're not going out onto your stoop and sitting out there and seeing your neighbors. People are pulling into their garages. They are closing that garage and just walking in and not talking to their neighbors.
I agree with that so wholeheartedly. As one who did grow up by like sitting out in front stoop and just there would be one kid that goes out to go play, and then all of a sudden all of us are out playing. The parents are getting together.
There is a very, very strong endorphin response that happens in the brain with community, and there's a really great book out there. It's called The Blue Zones, and it's actually a study of all the there's 5 areas of the world where the most centenarians live, and that is the most people who live over 100. Do you want to try to guess where these blue zones are? No. You don't?
Couldn't even begin to tell you.
Okay, so one is Okinawa, Japan.
Okay. I didn't know we were going, worldwide, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah. No, there's one in the United States. There's I can't remember, but it's the name of it's a village in Costa Rica. Okay. Akaros, Greece. Sardinia, Italy. And it's a coastal community in South California, and Seventh-day Adventists. And if you don't know what Seventh-day Adventism is, it's basically like your body's a temple. But there are 6 or 7 main things that those societies all employ, and one is community. All of those communities are densely populated, or they have very, very strong community ties, meaning they have festivals, they have everyone's downtown, a lot of daily grocery shopping. So people are down at the market, they know who's giving their food, they know who's growing their food and raising their food. So I don't want to go off too much of a tangent, but basically
I think more of that needs to exist. And I live in suburbia now, and I don't get any of that.
Yeah. I mean, we have in my neighborhood, we have a block party. It's once a year now. We have some really great ladies here who are awesome at creating different events, but we have to, in the suburbs, a lot of time manufacture that community through sports and rec and travel and block parties and it's like sometimes you even need like an act of Congress to get like friends together for dinner in the city and in denser like boroughs and like downtowns. That is more of a foregone conclusion where people do that. Mm-hmm. So that is something you lose in the suburbs, I think. Yes, you get you get more square footage for your dollar. You don't get as much square footage for your dollar. But
I was going to say, beg differ.
yeah, it's the opposite. But in the end, you get, you get more room, you get more land, and the school quality is different. But generally, that is the one thing that I think is a big downside to the suburbs is you do risk losing some of that community, and you have to manufacture it. That is not necessarily the case everywhere. And it's very hard to distinguish it when you're buying a house. And
I always tell people, if you're like, I'm not going to give you opinions as far as neighborhoods go, I'm not allowed to. B, my opinion is different than your opinion. I give you facts. And if you want to curate your opinion of what it's like, I always say, like, go on a weeknight and just like drive around, like go take a walk, like park somewhere and just like, I mean, it might be kind of creepy for strangers to be walking through your neighborhood, but just to get an idea of what it's like, or go on a weekend and kind of like, again, just take a walk around, see what it's like, go to a park, make a day of it and see what the neighborhood's like, just to know before.
So I actually, I just settled a client in Bucks County, and that's what they did after every showing. They brought their dog, and then they walked their dog after the showing, and they would just walk around, and we would almost always see stuff at night because they both work during the day, and they would just go around and talk to everybody in the neighborhood and be like, hey, what's it like living here? They literally would, like, I think out of about 12 houses we saw, they only had one interaction where they're like, well, these aren't our people.
Well, I was, so that's what's fun about showing down Delco. I had a client, we were out, we were in Havertown, and while we were showing the house, like one of the neighbors was out, and we just got chatting with them and talking, and like they were so nice, and it was like, I want to buy this house because I like the neighbors. Like I want to be these people's neighbors.
Yeah.
And
well, and that lends itself to what I'm talking about, is that community is so important. And it's why people go to church, and it's why they sign their kids up for rec sports, and they do block parties, and people have just neighborhood parties, because it's important for us to have community. The people who isolate themselves, and it's if you want to talk to somebody who has a really, really good take on that, is talk to someone who's retired. The people who retire, they hold themselves away and watch Fox News or CNN all day, and they see their friends, once every 2 weeks, and they see their kids, during the holidays. That person is much more likely to have health issues, more likely to die earlier, and also just suffer from depression, anxiety, and get hijacked by whatever stimulus they're getting. The people who go out and they play, they do bingo, they do mahjong, they play golf, they do shuffleboard, whatever. Those are the people that will literally live longer because you're activating that part of your brain. So not to get too anthropological here, but in the end, it's like if you have community, you will live longer. And so that's an important thing to think about when you are moving into a community, whether it's your neighbor or it's like, hey, does this place have a great rec system, or does it have a lot of things to do for the kids? Is there a lot of how are the schools? Are the schools got a lot of activities and extracurriculars? It's all those types of things that add up to a great life.
I'll end it with one pro for the suburb life.
One pro?
Yeah, on the pro-com for the suburbs.
Okay.
We don't have the PPA.
What's the PPA?
What's the PPA?
Is it the Parking Authority?
The Philadelphia Parking Authority. Yo. Fuck the PPA. Strong emphasis.
All right, so I'm going to, in the show notes, Mr. and Mrs. PPA, I'm going to get
the entire city of Philadelphia.
Her license plate will be, once it enters the city limits, you'll definitely know that Jen has... and if you see somebody running out of their row home and parking on behalf of somebody, you'll know that it's her. And just fine her, and it'll make for a good story. And
the entire city of Philadelphia agrees with me. I can tell you that much.
Okay, well then we'll put it out for a poll.
Okay.
All right.
Comment in the bottom. Are you pro or anti PPA? Can't wait to see the results.
Also, just as another reminder, please like and subscribe. The lifeblood of this podcast is your participation and support, and you guys have all been great so far. But just as a reminder,
and be nice.
And be nice, except to the PPA.
Except for the PPA, they don't deserve our niceness. Okay. Until next time. Bye.
See ya.